The Little Store That Never Sleeps, a bedtime story in 7 chapters. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Arrived with Nothing. The flight from London had been 14 hours long. Maya Sinclair knew this because she had counted the little animated airplane on the seatback screen approximately 40 times, willing it across the tiny cartoon ocean with the focused desperation of someone who had not slept in 2 days and had made the arguably rash decision to quit her job, sell most of her furniture, pack a single backpack, and fly to a city she had never visited, on a continent she had never been to figure out what, exactly, she was supposed to do with the rest of her life. The airplane had not moved any faster for the staring. She landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport at 11:45 at night, local time. The air that hit her when she stepped outside the arrivals hall was not merely hot, it was alive. It had texture. It pressed against her skin like a warm, damp hand, fragrant with something floral and something smoky and something else she couldn't name, something green and ancient and tropical that had no equivalent in the English vocabulary. After a gray London February, it felt like walking into a dream that someone else had been having for a very long time. She had booked a hostel in the Asylum District. She had a printed map because her international data plan had, in a moment of spectacular bad timing, failed to activate. She had her backpack, which weighed 11 kilograms and contained 3 changes of clothes, a dog-eared copy of a novel she had already read twice, a journal with only 4 pages filled in, and a small Ziploc bag of medications, plasters, and a single photograph of her dog, Biscuit, who was staying with her parents in Edinburgh and was, by all accounts, having the time of his life. She did not have Thai baht. This was a problem she discovered at the taxi rank, where a cheerful driver in a pink cab quoted her a price in a currency she could not currently produce. The ATM inside the terminal had been out of service. There was, she noted on the printed map, another ATM indicated near her hostel. She said thank you to the taxi driver, shouldered her backpack, and began to walk. This was, she would later admit, perhaps not her finest navigational decision. The distance from the airport to Ceylon was not a walking distance, it was a motorway distance. But it was 11:45 at night, and Maya was the sort of person who, when confronted with a problem she had created herself, responded by walking directly into it and hoping something would reveal itself along the way. Something did. 20 minutes later, footsore and slightly sweaty and entirely uncertain which direction she was heading, Maya turned a corner and saw it, green and red and gold, blazing against the black Bangkok sky like a lighthouse. The number 7, confident as a declaration, followed by the word 11, in letters that seemed to lean forward slightly, as though they were perpetually in a hurry, which felt exactly right for a store that was always open. Ding-dong. The sound was small and perfect, like a single piano note played at exactly the right moment in a song. The sliding doors parted, and then, like stepping from one world into another, the cold air reached her. Maya stopped walking. She had experienced air conditioning before, obviously. She was from a country that had invented central heating, which meant they had also been obliged to invent air conditioning, though they used it with the cautious infrequency of people who had been burned before by optimism about the weather. But she had never experienced air conditioning like this. This was air conditioning as a philosophy, air conditioning as a statement of intent. The difference between the outside and the inside was so dramatic, so immediate, so physically overwhelming, that she stood in the doorway for a full 3 seconds, simply existing in the middle of it, feeling the cold and the heat meeting on either side of her like 2 tides. Then she stepped all the way inside, and the doors closed behind her, and the world became very quiet and very cool and smelled faintly of something warm and eggy and wonderful, and Maya Sinclair, who had been on the verge of a small, private, thoroughly justified breakdown, exhaled a long, slow breath and felt for the first time in perhaps several months entirely all right. Chapter 2. The Art of the Toastie. The store was long and narrow and lit with the particular certainty of a place that has never once considered closing. Every surface was clean, every shelf was full. The aisles were narrow enough that 2 people had to turn sideways to pass each other, which gave the whole place an intimacy, a sense that everyone inside was, however briefly, sharing something. At this hour, the other customers were one construction worker in dusty clothes buying 3 cans of something carbonated, a young woman in nurse's scrubs studying her phone, a teenage boy asleep on his feet by the drinks fridge, waiting apparently for his friend to decide between 2 identical-looking bottles, and a very small, very elderly man in a white undershirt and loose trousers who seemed to be reading the label on a packet of crackers with the dedicated attention of someone who had all the time in the world, which, at his age, perhaps he had decided he did. Maya walked slowly down the first aisle, trailing her fingers along nothing, just looking. There were chips and flavors she had never imagined. Seaweed, tom yum, grilled prawn, something labeled with a small illustration of what appeared to be a dressed salad leaf that the packaging claimed in English was myang kam, a flavor that sounded like a song title and looked, from the golden tint of the chips inside the bag, absolutely extraordinary. There were drinks she couldn't decode, bottles of pale pink liquid with floating cubes of something translucent inside them, cans with Japanese characters and cartoon mascots, tall bottles of what appeared to be chrysanthemum tea, small hexagonal bottles of something called Vitamilk that was, the illustration suggested, made from soybeans and was apparently popular enough to come in 6 different varieties. There were collagen drinks and beauty drinks and drinks that promised to improve her skin, her focus, her energy, and her general outlook on existence. There were little refrigerator sections behind glass doors, stacked neatly with triangular sandwiches, plastic-wrapped buns, and, here, a row of croissants and small folded sandwiches in paper sleeves, each one labeled by hand in Thai with a small sticker: ham and cheese, shredded pork, tuna, carbonara. Maya picked up the ham and cheese croissant. It was cold in her hand, dense and substantial, the kind of thing that suggested it had ambitions. She carried it to the counter where the staff member, a young man with a round, friendly face and the name tag reading Nong, looked at the croissant, then looked at Maya, then smiled and held out his hand with the particular patience of someone who has explained something 10,000 times and never once found it tiresome. He took the croissant, unwrapped a corner of it, and placed it in a machine that Maya had not fully noticed, a small stainless steel press set into the counter with 2 flat-heated plates that closed together with a solid, definitive clunk. It glowed faintly red. It hummed. Maya watched. The construction worker paid for his cans and left. The nurse selected something from the fridge and went. The teenager was shaken gently awake by his friend who had made a decision. The old man turned a page, not of a book, but of his own thoughts, moving at his own unhurried pace. 2 minutes passed. Then Nong opened the press, rewrapped the croissant in its sleeve. The paper was now warm, almost hot to the touch, and held it out to Maya with a receipt. The total was 35 baht. She had, at the bottom of her backpack in a side pocket she had forgotten about, a small collection of foreign coins from previous trips, euros, dirhams, Singapore dollars, and, tucked beneath them, a folded note. She pulled it out. British pounds, useless, but underneath it, miraculously, a purple note she didn't recognize. She turned it over. 100 baht. She had no memory of acquiring it. It was essentially a gift from a past version of herself who had apparently been more prepared. She paid. She received 65 baht change. She was now technically solvent in Thailand. She stood near the door and unwrapped one end of the croissant. The steam came out first, a little white breath of it rising gently in the cold air. Then the smell. Butter and ham and melted cheese, sweet and savory at the same time, rich in a way that immediately communicated to every tired cell in her body that things were going to be okay. She took a bite. The outside was perfectly crisp, almost lacquered. The inside was soft and yielding, and the cheese had melted into every layer of pastry so thoroughly that it was impossible to say where the croissant ended and the filling began. It was hot all the way through. It was the right amount of salty. It cost less than £1.
Maya ate it slowly, standing near the door, not caring that she was blocking the path a little because no one was coming in, and the store was quiet, and the cold air was on her face. And for a moment, she was so comprehensively in the present, not worried about the future, not grieving the past, not calculating distances or exchanging rates or wondering if she had made a terrible mistake, that she felt almost transparent with contentment. She folded the empty paper sleeve neatly and put it in the bin beside the counter. "Good?" asked Nong. "Good," she said. "Very good." He smiled and turned back to his phone. Maya decided to stay a while longer.
Chapter 3: The Science of the Perfect Drink. She found the drink section by following her instincts, which led her first left, then right, then through a narrow gap between a shelf of instant noodles and a small refrigerator humming with canned coffees. The refrigerators here were floor to ceiling, stretching the full length of the back wall, backlit in cool white, so that the bottles and cans and cartons inside glowed like exhibits in a very cheerful museum. She stood in front of them for a long time, reading labels. There was a tea that was already brewed and sweet, a deep amber color in a tall bottle. There was a milk tea with tapioca pearls settled at the bottom. There was a melon soda. There was something called Green Mate that was electric green and made various promises involving antioxidants. And then there was the Mogu. Mogu, a bottle of juice with little round pearls of coconut jelly suspended inside it, like a snow globe of flavor, available in lychee, peach, strawberry, and something simply labeled white grape, which had an extraordinarily elegant sound to it. At the far end of the drinks wall, a machine dispensed crushed ice into large plastic cups. Maya had not seen this before. The ice was finely crushed, almost powdery, more snow than ice, and it tumbled into the cup with a soft whirring sound that was immensely satisfying. She took a large cup, she filled it with ice, then she stood in front of the refrigerators and began to think. This was, she would later decide, the beginning of what she came to call the 7-11 alchemy, the specific creative pleasure of assembling a custom drink from the available ingredients, guided not by any recipe, but by intuition and curiosity and a willingness to try things that had no logical basis in existing beverage science. She poured half the bottle of Thai iced tea over the ice. The amber tea stained the snow white ice immediately, swirling and pooling in the gaps between crystals. Then she added a small bottle of something called canned espresso, a tiny can from the all cafe section near the counter, dark and strong smelling, which she cracked open and poured in a thin stream over the back of a spoon, watching it layer over the tea. She looked at the result. It was layered in shades of brown, dark over light, the ice visible through the side of the clear cup. It looked, honestly, quite beautiful. She took a sip. The cold hit first, then the sweetness of the tea, then the bitterness of the coffee underneath it, and then something happened in the combination that was greater than the sum of its parts. A flavor that was simultaneously energizing and comforting. Warm in character, despite being physically cold, the kind of thing that made you feel alert and relaxed at the same time, which sounds contradictory and may well have been, but worked entirely in practice. She drank half of it standing by the fridge. Then she carried the rest to the small ledge near the window. There was no seating exactly, but there was a narrow counter running along the glass at the front of the store, and Maya perched on the edge of it, her backpack at her feet, her drink in both hands, and looked out at Bangkok. The street outside was quieter than she expected. She had heard that Bangkok never really slept, and this was true in the larger sense. There was always sound, always light at some distance, but on this particular street, at this particular hour, it was almost meditative. A motorbike passed slowly, its headlight sweeping the road. Somewhere far away, a temple bell rang once and then fell silent. A dog trotted purposefully across the end of the road, clearly somewhere to be. The 7-Eleven's neon sign hummed softly behind her. The refrigerators hummed back. Nong was reading something on his phone, his face lit blue-white in the quiet store. The drinks in the fridge waited in their patient, glowing rows. Maya felt the tiredness of 14 hours of flying and 20 minutes of misguided walking settle into her bones like something warm. But it was a comfortable tiredness now, fed and cooled and no longer desperate. The kind of tiredness that was simply the body's honest accounting of the day. She finished her drink. She thought, I should find the hostel. And also, I am not in any hurry. And also, this is, against all probability, exactly where I am supposed to be. Chapter 4, The People of the Night. Over the following 2 weeks, Maya discovered that the 7-11 was not one story, but many. She came back every night. Sometimes twice. Once at midnight and once at 3 in the morning, when she had woken up inexplicably and found herself too awake for sleep, so she had dressed quietly so as not to disturb her hostel roommates, and walked the 6 minutes to the green and red light and the ding-dong and the cold air, which had already begun to feel like a greeting from a reliable friend. She learned the rhythms of the store and the people who moved through it. At midnight, it was the tourists, other backpackers like herself, from Germany and Australia and Japan and Brazil, who had all found their way here by some common gravitational pull. They congregated around the drinks fridge and the toasty press with the reverence of pilgrims at a shrine, which was, Maya thought, not as absurd a comparison as it might initially seem. They photographed their sandwiches before eating them. They assembled elaborate drinks and photographed those too. They sent photographs to people at home who were presumably very confused. There was a woman from Sao Paulo named Fernanda, who was working her way through every flavor of Lay's chips in the country, which was, it turned out, a project of considerable ambition. The flavors ran to green curry and butter crab and basil stir fry and at least 4 varieties of tom yum, and who kept a little notebook in which she recorded her verdicts. Maya had looked over her shoulder once and seen entries like Mien Calm, Floral, Complex, Haunting, 9/10, Would Eat at a Funeral, and Nori Seaweed, Honest. No pretensions, 7/10. She had decided immediately that Fernanda was one of the most interesting people she had ever met. There was a man in his 60s named Horst from somewhere in Bavaria who was traveling alone after his retirement and who came to the 7-11 every morning at 6 and every evening at 10 and always bought the same things: a pork bun, a Vitamilk, and a small bag of prawn crackers. He ate them standing at the window counter and watched the street with the focused attention of a naturalist in the field. When Maya asked him what he was looking at, he said, simply, everything. Then, after a pause, I spent 40 years looking at a spreadsheet. Now I am looking at everything else. He said this with such quiet satisfaction that Maya had nothing to add. There was a pair of young Korean women, Ji-yeon and Sora, who were on a gap year together and who came to the 7-11 specifically for the skincare aisle, which they approached with the seriousness of professionals assessing inventory. They knew the names of the active ingredients in every sachet. They could explain, with patient detail, the difference between a hydrating serum and a brightening serum, and why the Thai formulations of certain sunscreens were superior to their domestic equivalents. Maya had listened to a 15-minute explanation of niacinamide concentrations while eating a green curry rice pot, and had understood perhaps a third of it, but had come away with 3 sachets of something that Ji-yeon promised would change her skin, which Maya found over the following week was not an exaggeration. And then there was Nong. Nong worked the night shift, which meant he was the person Maya saw most often. He was 22. He was studying business administration at a university nearby and worked nights 4 times a week to cover his fees. He had a habit of folding small origami figures from the receipt paper when the store was quiet, not elaborate ones, just cranes and small boats, which he arranged along the shelf behind the counter. By the end of each shift, there were usually 4 or 5 of them lined up in a row. Maya assumed he threw them away at the end of the night. She never asked. Some things are better left as mysteries. He spoke English carefully and precisely, in the way of someone who had learned it from textbooks, and was quietly discovering that actual spoken English was somewhat different from the textbooks, but who was too polite to be annoyed about this. He asked Maya questions with genuine curiosity. Where was she from? Why had she come alone? What did she do at home? What was she going to do next? Maya found that the last question was easier to answer at 3 in the morning in a Thai 7-11, with cold air on her face and a toasty in her hand, than it had been in any other context for the past year and a half. "I don't know yet," she said one night. "I think that's sort of the point of being here." Nong nodded. He was folding a receipt into something four-cornered. "My grandmother says the same thing about life in general," he said. "She's 83. Is that comforting or terrifying?" He considered this seriously. "Both," he said. "I think that is also the point." Chapter 5. The Salapao and the Rain. It rained on a Tuesday. Not the polite, apologetic rain of northern England, which arrives sideways and mumbles an excuse. Bangkok rain announces itself. It builds in the sky like something with intentions. The air becomes heavy and still and electric. Then the first drops hit the pavement with the force of small stones, and within 30 seconds, the street is a river, and within a minute, the world has been divided into those who are inside and those who are outside and are having a very different experience.
Maya was outside when it started. She had been on her way back from the Grand Palace. She had spent the afternoon there in the heat, walking barefoot over cool marble and tipping her head back to look at gold-tiled spires, and she was halfway down a narrow street she didn't recognize when the sky simply opened. She ran. There was no useful direction to run, so she ran toward the nearest light, which was green and red and gold, and she arrived at the ding-dong breathless and entirely soaked through, her hair plastered flat, her sandals full of warm rainwater, her backpack streaming. The store received her without judgment. The cold air hit her wet skin, and she shivered, which was somehow wonderful, the contrast of it. The shock of going from a hot monsoon rain to crisp refrigerated air in the span of a doorway. She stood and dripped for a moment, then stepped further inside, leaving small puddles on the clean floor and feeling slightly bad about it. Nong appeared from behind the counter with a roll of paper towels and handed it to her without being asked and without comment, which was an act of such undemonstrative kindness that Maya felt disproportionately moved by it. She dried off as best she could. Her clothes were still damp but no longer sodden. She stood at the window and watched the rain come down in gray-white sheets, turning the street into a current, the tuk-tuks retreating under awnings, the street vendors pulling tarps over their carts, the whole city collectively deciding to wait. She was not in a hurry. She had by this point stopped being in a hurry. Hurry had been one of the things she'd left behind with the furniture. She went to the hot food section near the back of the store, where a small display case kept the ready-to-eat meals warm. There were several options, labeled in both Thai and English: pad kra pao with rice, green curry with rice, a small container of pork in red sauce, a yellow curry that smelled of turmeric and lemongrass. But what caught her eye was a small basket beside the warmer, containing round white buns, 3 of them, stacked in a simple paper sleeve. Salapao. She had read about these. Chinese-style steamed buns, filled with sweet pork or custard or red bean paste, a staple of Thai breakfast culture that had found its way, as so many good things do, into the permanent custody of 11. She bought 2, 1 pork, 1 custard, and took them to the window counter. The pork one was dense and sweet-savory, the filling generous and garlicky, the bun itself pillowy in a way that seemed to defy the physics of bread. The custard one was somehow better. The filling was pale yellow and smooth and tasted of coconut and egg, barely sweet, the bun slightly sticky on the outside where the steam had condensed. She ate them both slowly, watching the rain. The other people sheltering in the store were a rotating cast, a family with a very young child who fell asleep on the father's shoulder, while the father ate a convenience store meal standing up, undisturbed. 2 monks in orange robes who bought water and a packet of crackers and stood near the door with their eyes half closed. A delivery driver who pulled his motorbike under the awning came in to buy a coffee, stood drinking it in the doorway with his helmet still on, watching the street with an expression of philosophical patience. Maya watched all of them. She filled another page in her journal. Outside, the rain continued its magnificent, indiscriminate generosity. At some point, Nong came to stand beside her at the window for a moment on his break. "You like it?" he asked, meaning the rain. "Very much," she said. "Most tourists don't." Most tourists are silly, said Maya, which was not entirely fair, but felt true in the moment. Nong laughed. He had a good laugh, quiet and genuine. My mother says Bangkok is not a city, he said. It's more like a feeling. You have to stop trying to understand it and just let it happen to you. Maya wrote this in her journal verbatim and underlined it twice. Chapter 6, The Night of the Skincare Aisle. She became a regular. This was not a conscious decision. It was simply what happened when you returned to a place every day and found it consistently good. Regularity is loyalty of the most honest kind, not a promise, but a pattern. She had learned the skincare aisle by now. She had initially avoided it, feeling out of her depth, but Ji-Yun and Sora had given her a tutorial one evening that she now thought of as one of the more genuinely educational experiences of her adult life. The sachets were the key. Single-use packets, each the size of a playing card, containing a teaspoon or two of concentrated product serums, essences, toners, sheet masks, sunscreens. They cost between 15 and 60 baht each. This was, once Maya had done the conversion in her head, somewhere between 30 pence and £1.20, for products that in a London pharmacy would have cost 12 to 30 pounds for the full-size version. She became, over the course of her third week, something of a connoisseur. She had a sunscreen she used every morning, SPF 50, Korean formula, available in a sachet that she applied in the 7-Eleven bathroom because her hostel bathroom's mirror was positioned at an angle she found unhelpful. She had a sheet mask for Tuesday nights, which she wore while eating the pork bun and reading the novel she'd now started for a third time. She had a vitamin C serum that Ji-Yun had pressed on her with the urgency of someone sharing genuinely important information, and which was, Maya had to admit, doing something interesting to her complexion. One evening, she spent 40 minutes in the skincare aisle, making very careful selections. Nong, passing with a box of restocked drinks, looked at the small collection she'd assembled and said, "That's a lot." "I'm sending some home," Maya said. Gifts. She had written to her mother asking what kind of skin type she had. Her mother had replied with a photograph of a moisturizer she had been using since 1994, which was helpful in the sense that it told Maya her mother was committed to tradition and unhelpful in every other sense. She had, in her time at the 7-Eleven, assembled what she privately thought of as her Bangkok pharmacy, a rotating stock of things that cost almost nothing and worked extremely well, which felt like a kind of miracle, or at least a reminder that the price of something and the quality of something are not, despite what the world sometimes implies, the same thing at all. She paid for the small pile of sachets and got change from her 100 baht note. She had, at this point, become so comfortable with baht that she thought in it automatically. Prices in pounds felt strange and theoretical. Outside, the evening was warm and soft, the humidity gentled somewhat by an hour of earlier rain. She sat on the step outside the 7-Eleven. The cat was there, as always, its golden eyes half closed, and arranged her little packets in a row on the step beside her, photographing them to send to Ji-Yun, who had moved on to Chiang Mai but texted regularly with product recommendations. The cat sniffed one of the sachets. "That one's not for you," Maya told it. The cat looked at her with the expression of a creature that has never needed to be told anything twice. Chapter 7. The Last Night and What She Decided. Her flight home was on a Friday. She had booked 3 weeks. She had extended to 6. She had spent her savings more carefully than she expected, because the extraordinary purchasing power of her budget in Bangkok meant that she ate well every day for roughly the cost of a sandwich in London, and she had been able to afford small luxuries, a guided temple tour, a cooking class, a day trip to an island that she hadn't originally planned. She had met Fernanda, who had become the kind of friend that geography cannot sustain, but that remains, regardless, a real and important thing. She had learned 12 words of Thai, 8 of which were food-related. She had started sleeping properly, for the first time in perhaps 2 years. On the last night, she came to the 7-Eleven for the final time. It was 2 in the morning. Her flight was at 8. She had packed everything and set an alarm and had come out in the warm Bangkok night with no particular purpose except the need to mark the occasion in some way, and this was the place that felt right for it. Nong was there, as always. Last night, she told him, and he understood immediately, the way people understand things when they have been watching you for long enough. "You want the usual?" he said. She did. She went to the chiller and picked up a ham and cheese croissant. She filled a large cup with crushed ice and mixed herself one final alchemy drink, Thai iced tea, a shot of espresso, a small pour of coconut milk that she added on a whim, watching it cloud through the amber tea in slow swirling patterns. She selected a sheet mask she hadn't tried yet, charcoal, which seemed vaguely dramatic in an appropriate way, and a final bag of the Miang Kam chips, which she had decided were the greatest achievement of the Thai snack food industry and possibly of snacking in general. She laid everything on the counter. Nong pressed the croissant without being asked. While she waited, she looked around the store, really looked. In the way you look at places when you know you are looking for the last time. The clean shelves, the glowing drinks fridge, the tiny origami crane on the shelf behind the counter, the night's first completed one, a small white triangle of folded receipt paper, the hum of the refrigerators, the particular quality of the light, which was both bright and soft somehow, like the idea of light rather than the thing itself. The press opened. Nong rewrapped the croissant. She paid. He counted back her change. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked, which was, she thought, exactly the right question for 2 in the morning on the last night. "Yes," she said. And then, because it was the most honest thing she could say, "I came here not knowing what I wanted to do next. I still don't know exactly, but I think I know now that not knowing is actually fine. Maybe even good." Nong considered this. He was folding a second crane. "My grandmother," he said, "says that the people who are most sure of where they are going are usually going somewhere boring." Maya laughed out loud in the quiet store, a surprised, genuine laugh that she hadn't heard from herself in a while. She gathered her things. She went to the window counter one last time and sat there with her drink and her croissant and her chips, and she ate and drank slowly, watching the street outside where Bangkok was already beginning to stir, the first motorbikes, the first street cart setting up, the first lights coming on in the buildings across the way. The cat came and sat beside the door. It observed the street with its golden eyes. It did not ask for anything. It simply kept vigil as it always did over the quiet hours between the night and the morning. At 3:15, Maya shouldered her backpack and stood up. "Thank you," she said to Nong. She wasn't sure exactly what she was thanking him for. The croissant, the questions, the origami, the consistency of being there every night, being exactly himself in a city of 10 million people where everything was new and loud and astonishing, providing something small and warm and always available. He waved from behind the counter without looking up from the crane he was folding. The doors slid open. The warm air came in. Ding dong. And Maya Sinclair walked out into the Bangkok dawn, backpack on her shoulders, 65 baht in her pocket, the last bite of a perfect croissant on her tongue, heading somewhere she hadn't decided yet, which was she had come to understand exactly the right direction to go. Epilogue. What the store remembers. The 7-Eleven does not remember anyone. It cannot. It is a store. It has shelves and refrigerators and a toasty press and a small electronic bell above the sliding doors. It does not retain impressions of the people who pass through it. By morning, it has been restocked, cleaned, reset, a new shift, a new inventory, a new set of strangers arriving hungry and tired and hot, stepping through the doors and feeling the cold air wrap around them like something that knows, without being told, exactly what they need. But if stores could remember, if the refrigerators could hold impressions the way they hold cold, if the air could carry the residue of the people who have breathed it, then this one would remember all of them. Horst and his crackers and his slow, contented watching. Fernanda and her notebook of chip verdicts. The monks in orange, the delivery driver with his helmet on. The family with the sleeping child. Jian and Sora and their encyclopedic knowledge of niacinamide. The old man reading cracker labels with the patience of a monk. And Maya, a girl who arrived with nothing, no bot, no bearings, no particular plan, and found, in a convenience store on a Bangkok corner, a small and reliable version of the thing she had been looking for. Not an answer, not a destination, just a light that was always on, just a door that always opened, just a sound small and clear and welcoming at the end of a long walk in the dark. Ding dong. Now close your eyes. You are in a warm city, and the air smells of something green and ancient, and somewhere not far away, a little sign is glowing red and green and gold against the dark. You are not lost. You are exactly where the night meant to bring you. Sleep well. The end.
Thailand still holds countless stories waiting to be discovered. If you would like to continue this journey together, I hope to see you again in the next story from Thailand Through Eyes. And if there is somewhere in Thailand you wish to visit through story, leave your suggestion below. Perhaps our next journey will begin there.